Workplace of Nora Wilson on South Road in Marlboro. Today's interview crew is Taylor Colin Smith on audio, Fran Johansson on digital camera, and Mesa Kennedy on video, and Elizabeth Colin Smith on interview. I'd like to ask a few questions about your background. Have you always lived in Marlboro, or did you move here from somewhere else?
I moved here from somewhere else, but when I was very small, I lived here for 1 year when I was about 4, and then we moved away and I lived here again when I was 6. I went to first grade here in Marlboro. Then we moved away and we came here every summer, and then after I got out of college, I moved all around the country, and then in 1977 I moved back here to Vermont, and I lived here for a year. Then I moved up to central Vermont, and then in 1981 I moved back to Marlboro, and I've been here ever since.
Where did you live as a child?
I grew up in Lexington, Massachusetts.
How would you describe yourself when you were a child?
That's an interesting question. I think I was pretty happy. I had some pretty hard things as a little girl, but I was pretty happy, and I loved being here when we were here in the summers. That was my favorite place to be.
So have you lived in town for how many years?
Since 1981, so about 26 years, because my son, who was born that year, is turning 26.
May I ask how old you are now?
I'm 61.
Okay, I'm going to ask you work-related questions. Did you go to college?
Yes.
What college?
I went to Bennington College, but I did not graduate.
What did you study?
I studied liberal arts. Political science and history were my major and my minor.
How have you learned what you need to know to be a town clerk?
Well, I went to secretarial school in California and learned a lot of office skills. I was born with a gene for organization and for keeping things neat and making sure paperwork gets done. And for this specific job, it was on-the-job training. I just came in, and the person who had been the clerk before me worked with me for a couple of weeks and got me going on the basics, and then I was pretty much on my own. I could call him when I had a question, and you can, when you're a town clerk, you can call any other town clerk and they'll help you with a question. And the state government has a lot of offices that work with us and can answer any questions that we have.
For how long have you been a town clerk of Marlboro?
18 years.
How did you get to be the town clerk?
I was appointed by the select board. It's an elected position, but the town clerk who was the clerk before me wanted to resign, and when someone resigns, then the select board appoints somebody to fill the job until the next election. And I always thought that I would like to be town clerk, but I didn't want to run against the person who had been clerk before. And one day I was out on the porch and he said something about wanting to resign, and I said, well, if you're serious, I said, I'll take the job. And then I just walked away because I didn't think he was serious. And when I got home, he called me and he said, I am serious. So I said, okay. And he talked to the select board and they appointed me.
How would you describe your job?
Oh, well, as I said before we turned the cameras on, this is the government office for the town of Marlboro. And so all the business of the town government goes on out of this office. And the town clerk's job is to keep all the records of the town in order and available for people who need to use them, and that includes, like these books back here, these are what are called land records. And when somebody buys a piece of property, they create a piece of paper called a deed that says, Mr. Smith sells this piece of property to Mr. Jones. And then those pieces of paper are copied into books and they're kept here. And these early books go back to the 1700s, the late 1700s. And then this is the most recent book that we're working on right now. Now, in those days, they copied them by hand. So they're written in ink in those books. Now, of course, we have a copier and we copy them in here. And so that's one thing, is keeping all the land records. We also keep all the vital records. So we have birth certificates, death certificates, marriage certificates, and those also go all the way back. I know I have one for you. I think I might have one for you. I think I have Ferns. I don't think I have Mesas, because you weren't born here, were you? Anyway. And then we also keep, when a committee or a group in town meets, has a meeting, they have to keep minutes. They have to write down what they did at the meeting, who was there, what rules they passed, what votes they took. And they have to write all of that down, and we keep all of those books, all those in here. Have you ever heard your parents talking about their tax bills? When they get their property tax bill? Well, one of the other, David's son, Forrest, is what's called a lister, and he's in charge of deciding how much each piece of property in town is worth. And then the treasurer's office puts out a bill and sends that out to all the parents, and they have to pay the tax bill, all the owners, and they have to pay the tax bill. And we keep the record of all the values of the town, all the property in town. And it's, a lot of people, it's a lot of different papers, records, and everything has to be indexed. So there's, if someone wants to come and look something up, like we could look up Curlin Smith in this book here, in these books, drawers here, and it would tell us where the paperwork for when your parents bought their house, which book it's in. Same thing with your parents. They own a house, don't they, Mesa? So we could look in here under Kennedy and we would find that, and the same with Fern's parents. We also have these two big file cabinets right here are full of permits. Every time you build something in Marlboro, if you build a house or a shed or a driveway, you have to get a permit from the town. And those are all in those files. And this file over here is all maps. So it's my job to keep all that paperwork in a system in a way that they'll be able to, people can find it. The other thing that I do is, another very important thing I do is I run all the elections in the town. So when people in town vote for president or for town clerk, I'm in charge of all the ballots and setting up the polling place. I'm in charge of all the people who count the ballots, making sure that it's all done according to law, and making sure that everybody who wants to vote can vote, and registering all the voters, all of that. I also license all the dogs in town. I got a call this morning from your parents about a dog that's been running down your way, Stray, a white dog. And I'm trying to think, there's so many different little things like that. Sometimes I forget until it comes up again. But that pretty much answers the question, I think. Oh, and there's one other thing which is not part of the description. All my jobs, all the things I just told you, it's all set by law. When the legislature over the years has said this is the job the town clerk will do and this is how the town clerk will do it. And there's one job that town clerks do that is not set by law, that is a big part of our job, and that is, especially in small towns like Marlboro. this is the number that's in the phone book, and I'm the person who answers the phone. So a lot of people call, they don't know who to call, they don't know, they have a question, they don't quite know who they're supposed to ask, where they're supposed to go. So I'm kind of like a, I don't know what you'd say, like a, let me think how to say it right. Well, I say I'm the point man for the town. I'm the first person that people talk to often when they have contact with the town, and I try to help them find what they need to know, send them to the right person at the right place. And when people are buying a house in town, I'm often the first person they'll meet. And that is one of the most fun parts of the job too, is just interacting with all the people and helping them get what they need and be able to do what they want to do.
Knowing what to do as a clerk is one thing, but you've also got to serve the people who come in the office. Those can be two different skills. How have you learned to do both of them?
Well, all the little paperwork stuff, I told you how I learned that. And the people skills I've really worked on as clerk. One thing that I worked on very hard is teaching myself how to remember people's names, and teaching myself how, when I've forgotten somebody's name, how to nicely ask them and say, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name, I remember your face, but I just can't pull your name up, so that they feel comfortable and welcome in the office. And it was just something that I decided I was going to figure out how to do, and I'm not quite sure how I figured it out, but I just came up with little reminders for myself that would help me to remember.
Why do you people usually come into the office?
Say it again, I didn't hear
Why
you.
do people usually come into the office?
Oh, all kinds of reasons. We have the professional people who come in who are doing, like lawyers or appraisers who are going to decide. Do you know what an appraiser is? It's a person who looks at a property and determines what its value is. Surveyors, people who want to look at the records and find out information about properties because it's going to be for sale, or they're going to build something there, or they're going to determine how much it's worth so that people can get a loan, all those things. So that's one kind. Then there's a lot of people that come in for townspeople who live here, who come in because they have a bill they have to pay, or they have to license their dog, or they have a question about a letter that we sent out about something, or they're just, they're like, I've got this problem with somebody dumped garbage on my lawn, what do I do? Anything, so all different kinds of things like that we'll get from townspeople. And then we also have people who are coming to search their family trees. They want to find out, if they know that their great-great-grandmother used to live in this town, they want to find out if we have their marriage certificate, or if we know where they were buried, or things like that.
What are the jobs that you do the most?
The land record recording, which is just copying all the new deeds that come in and putting them in these books. That's one of the number one jobs. During an election year, the elections take up a lot of time. Some days I can come in with a list of things that I have that I want to get done, and I don't do any of it because all I do all day is answer the phone. And every time I answer the phone, there's a new question. It's a new, like, I had 6 things on my list, and I get 6 phone calls, and I have 12 things on my list. So it varies. Some days it'll be quiet and I can go right through what I had in mind. Other days, all hell breaks loose and I just roll with the punches.
What have been some of the more unusual problems people have brought to you?
Oh boy. Well, the one that comes to mind, this is Marlboro, Vermont. There is a Marlboro in New Hampshire, and there is a Marlboro in Massachusetts. And one summer afternoon, probably 10 years ago now, it was a hot summer afternoon. I think everybody in Marlboro was at South Bond. And this man came into the office and he started asking me questions, and he didn't speak English very well. I think he was Spanish speaking, his first language was Spanish. And he was asking me where the jail was. Well, now, we don't have a jail in Marlboro. And it took quite a while, and I think he went out to his car and got his wife, who could speak English a little better than he could. And what he had a friend who was in jail in Marlboro, Massachusetts. And he had come to Marlboro to get him out of jail. But he'd come to the wrong Marlboro. And it was about, 3 o'clock on a very hot summer afternoon. And finally I was able to understand what he needed, understand where he needed to go, and give him directions. But it was like, Marlboro, Massachusetts is an hour and a half away from here. He was way out in the wrong place, and I just felt so bad for him having to drive all that way. But that was pretty unusual. Let's see. I can't think of other things that are unusual right off the top of my head. A bunch of kids called and wanted to interview me. That was pretty strange. I can't think of anything really unusual. I'll probably think of something tonight.
Aside from the work you do in the office, what are some of the other duties and responsibilities of the town clerk?
Well, at town meeting, I take the minutes of the town meeting. And I'm the presiding officer of all elections, so I'm at the polling place from about 8 o'clock in the morning until we close up. We close the polls at 7, and then we start counting. And after all the ballots are counted, then I have to put everything away. And I'm required to attend a certain number of seminars and educational workshops every year, and I do those. And that's about it.
Have you had any other jobs other than being town clerk?
Oh, yes. Because, let's see, how old was I when I became town clerk? I was 43? Yeah, I was 43 when I became town clerk. So I had been a teacher and a sales clerk and a secretary and an administrative assistant, and a mom, full-time mom. That's about it.
What caused you to want to stop them?
Oh, most of the time I was either moving or I just wanted a change. Nothing really remarkable made me want to change.
Why did you want to become the town clerk in the first place?
Well, I thought I would be good at it, and I thought that it was it's a very interesting job. There's a lot of different parts to it, and I like working in a busy office. I like working with a lot of different people. I like helping people work their way through a system. I used to think that everybody was good at paperwork and everybody was good at figuring out how to get things done in a bureaucracy or in an office situation, and then I found out that that's not true. And I am good at it, and I enjoy, when somebody comes in and they say, well, I don't know if I need a permit for this from the state, and I could give them the telephone number of the person at the state that they need to call. But often I'll make the call for them because I just have a knack for asking the right questions, and so I can help them figure out what needs to be done and navigate through the bureaucracy, which can be very hard sometimes.
What are some of the reasons why you have continued to want to be the town clerk?
Well, as the more years I've been clerk, the more I've gotten to know people in town, and I like that. We have a great team in the office. I like working with everybody who works here. I need a job. I need to make money. That's another reason to keep working. I like being right here in town. I like that I don't have to go very far. And it's a very flexible job. I set my own hours. I can set my own vacation times and my own, and so there's a lot of freedom to it. But mostly it's just because it's really a very interesting job. There's a lot going on.
What is it about the job that keeps you at it?
Isn't that the same question you just asked me in a different way?
No.
No? Gee, I don't know. It seems like I already answered that. Well, because there's always something else to be done. Think about organizing big, large amounts of paper. You know, every one of those file drawers right behind Taylor is full of papers. And up until 2 years ago, those are the permits. They were filed by the person's name. So that meant that if you wanted to look at the permit for a house that was built in 1970, you had to know who owned the house in 1970, so that you could look up the person's name. And I decided that wasn't very good, because it's hard to know who owned the house 30 years ago. So I thought, well, we have maps of the town, and every lot that somebody owns has a number, and that doesn't change. The owner can change, but the number doesn't change. I said, let's put all those permits by number. So we took all those permits, thousands of pieces of paper. We went through every one. We figured out what was the number. Then we wrote the number on it. And then we made card files for them. And you know what? I like doing that. Some people hate doing that, but I like doing that. I really like figuring out the system and what will make it work the best possible way, what will make it easy for people to find the papers they need to find. There are thousands and thousands of sheets of paper in here, and some people come in and they need one of them. They know what the paper is about, but they don't know where it is. And so it's my job to make an easy way for them to find that paper. And I like doing that. I really get a kick out of it. It's silly.
What people or ideas or experiences would you say have influenced your thoughts about the job?
Say it again?
What people or ideas or experiences would you say have influenced your thoughts about the job?
Well, one person who influenced me a great deal was my grandfather, who died many, many years before I became town clerk. But he was a very particular person. He cared a lot about detail. He cared that things were done right. And he was a lawyer, and he cared very, very much that things were done according to the law. And he had very high moral standards. And I think he inspired me. This was my mother's father. James D. Williams was his name. And I think he inspired me. I often think of him. An example was one time, when you have an election, you say, At 7 o'clock, the polls close. That's what the state law says. So I have a clock, and at 7 o'clock, I say, the polls are closed. I announce it. And one time, I had just finished saying the polls are closed, and a voter came right through the front door wanting to vote. And I said, I'm sorry, you can't vote. The polls are closed. And it wasn't easy to say because the person who came through the door was somebody who's a lot older than I am. And I'm not in the habit of telling people who are a lot older than I am what they can do and can't do. But I knew that I had closed the polls and that you can't open them up because somebody walks through the door. He was late. That was the way it was. And that night when we counted the votes, there was a tie in one of the contests. Now, if I had let that person vote, there would not have been a tie. And everybody who had voted for the person who did not win would have been screaming and yelling because I had broken the rule. And it was really, I think, the way that my grandfather was that gave me the strength that night to say, the polls are closed, I'm sorry, you can't vote. And so that's one person. There's several people, the same year that I became clerk, Brattleboro appointed they have a little bit different system of government in Brattleboro because they're bigger, but they appointed a new town clerk there. She started the same year that I did. And we've gotten to be friends, and her name is Annette Cappy, and I admire her and find her to be very helpful when I have a question to discuss. And then the director of elections in Montpelier, she's the state director of elections, Kathy DeWolf, is also very knowledgeable, very helpful, and doesn't get caught up in personal animosity or personal problems. She's very able to be clear about what the issues are, and that's very inspiring and very helpful.
How would you say the job of town clerk has changed your career?
Well, I didn't have a career before I became town clerk, except as a mom. Well, I was a teacher for a while. I don't really know how to answer that. It surprises me that I've done it for 18 years. When I say I've been a clerk for 18 years, it surprises me that I've done something for that long. But I don't really think it's changed my career. It's changed me, but I don't think it's changed my career.
In your opinion, what are some of the difficulties that you and the town clerks of the small towns face today?
Oh. Well, I think that the job is getting bigger and bigger because there are more people, and the legislature, when the legislature passes new laws, that they can change what the town clerk has to do, or and I think in small towns, I think a lot of times when the legislature passes laws, a lot of times there are laws that are maybe more appropriate for Burlington or Rutland or Brattleboro, bigger towns, and sometimes implementing them in the small towns is difficult, or seems kind of like there's way too much to do. It doesn't really apply to us, but we have to do it anyway. So that can be difficult. Hold on. About how long do you think somebody needs a dog license? About how long?
Yeah, I can do it now because it's pause.
Okay. Shall we do that? We'll pause.